Alright, so I seem to be on the Dragon Age hype train and desperately hoping for a trailer this year, and I thought I would put out a few videos talking about what I want to see in the next iteration of Dragon Age. So without further ado, let's get into it. So the first thing I want to cover is the story and where I kind of think it's going to go, and maybe your part in it, but I will say straight up, I'm a little bit stumped on who you're going to play. I really don't have a good idea, and I think they could do a lot of different things, but we'll talk over that in a minute. I would also like to start by saying I'm not a lore expert, so I may have some discrepancies in my information. Please comment and let me know, but based on my experiences, this is what I think. So, I do believe that the story is obviously going to follow on directly from Trespasser. We're going to see Solus continue to try and return the elves to their former glory, even if that means the destruction of your world. So, what does that mean? Does that mean we know elves are leaving all over the world and going to join him? So is he just making an army, or is he once again trying to tear down the veil? Because that was the original plan for Inquisition. He wanted to use the orb and the mark to tear down the veil and return the elves to what they previously were. This would obviously cause problems for everyone else living on the planet, but he didn't really care. He sees it as what he has to do, because I imagine Solus kind of weighs every single elven death, every single city lost, and that history that has been essentially removed and culture removed from these people. He kind of puts on his own shoulders because it happened because of his actions. So he's really willing to risk anything to bring that back. Now we are fairly certain that this is going to happen in Tevinter. That makes the most sense to me. Everyone seems to be saying that. Everything seems to indicate that. And it's the one area they really haven't touched. And given the size of it and the importance of it, they kind of have to go there. And on top of that, there has been rumors / leaks / other things indicating that the Qunari once again are looking to invade. So we could have this kind of three-way war between Solus, Tevinter, and the Qunari, and where you fit into that could be anywhere. There is one thing I do want to say though. If he does tear down the veil, if that happens at the start of the game or midway through, could we see the return of the Evanures, the elven gods? Those particular gods who very much do not like Solus. So could we perhaps see a four-way war? Because if they return, granted they won't be at their strength, but if they do come back, surely some elves would side with them. Some would have that obligation. Some would just basically fall in line like they once did behind them in previous generations. So that would be an interesting dynamic for me. I would really enjoy to see that, to see this sort of four-way war, and especially if you could kind of pick which side you're on. Because if we're being perfectly honest, I don't really think any of them are technically evil. Like Solus, while his actions could be brutal and can certainly cause a lot of damage, he isn't an unfeeling villain. And in a lot of ways, especially for playing an elf, what he's trying to accomplish is in some ways a good thing. With the Evanures, we don't really know them. Like, they could come across as dictators and people who use their power to abuse the people and raise themselves up on the backs of others, and etc. But we don't really know. And Tevinter, while yes, it is a bit of a horrible nation, in the same sense that Rome was a horrible nation once upon a time. It's got a slave trade, they're not very nice over there, but we do see from Dorian and some of the others, they also have a very strong core of loyalty and good people who do want to see progress and change. So can you really call them an evil empire when you do have so many good people in it as well? It's a difficult question. And with the Qunari, like, if you read about the Qun, they're completely not evil. They just go about it in a very aggressive manner, which, take it how it is, I guess. Now, where does your main character, where does the protagonist fit into this story? And I got no idea. To me, I can't imagine it being anywhere other than obviously part of Tevinter. That would make the most sense to me. But if you were going to be part of Tevinter, I would almost imagine you would have to be human, and they're surely not going to scale you back. Like scale the character creation options back to just human, after what they just accomplished with Inquisition. Like, say what you want about Dragon Age 2, but Dragon Age 2 had a lot of faults and was criticised very heavily, and they worked very hard to make sure Inquisition had none of those faults, and they did mostly a damn good job. So I can't imagine them going backwards, and I'm pretty excited for the possibilities of what you could be. But to sort of recap on where we came from, let's remember that in Origins, you got to pick who you were. So you could be a human noble whose family was betrayed and you were out for revenge, a city elf who got into trouble with the abusive nobles and had to go on the run, a Dalish elf who got tainted while investigating some ruins, a circle mage who got caught up in the schemes and plots of another mage, and then you were held accountable and had to be saved, the dwarf commoner who was part of the Carter and got in over his head and had to run, the dwarf noble who was betrayed by his brother and banished. In all of these scenarios, you were saved by Duncan and had to join the Grey Wardens. So that was a very there was a lot of variation on all of those backgrounds, and they were all very unique. Like, I especially found the dwarf noble one and the human noble one extremely strong story-wise, and I really enjoyed them. So I don't think we're going to get something like that again. I think it's too much narrative freedom to put behind such behind another game like this. It was easy in Origins, but with so much background now coming into it, I can't imagine we'll see that again. In Dragon Age 2, when you were playing Hawk, you were kind of this just average guy who was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. All you're trying to do is get into Kirkwall, and all you're trying to do is have enough money to buy the house, and then survive, and then make a name for yourself, and you're not really setting out to be the hero at all. It just kind of happened by you naturally being in the wrong place at the wrong time. And then, of course, with Inquisition, I wouldn't exactly say you were the chosen one, but you were the unluckiest person in the world who happened to be in the room when this happened, and you got the mark, and the mark dictates who you are. So the one thing I will say with all that is, I don't think you're going to be a unique special individual at the head of an army again, because it would be too much like Inquisition. They're not going to say, hey, you're the Crusader and rah, we're going to follow you, because that would sound exactly like Inquisition. So they have to step away from this sort of chosen one mentality and make you something else. So I really, look, it's Bioware, I put a lot of trust in them for storytelling, and I can't wait to see which one they pick. I can't think of it, and it's actually killing me. I don't know where I'd like to see them go with this, and part of that is because of the complication around Tevinter. Now, some of the things that I do want to see answered, well, not answered, sorry, some of the things I want to see possibly brought up but don't necessarily expect to be is, what about the Titans? So we saw the Titans brought up in the Descent, and that opened a wealth of questions for me, which I loved everything about the ending to that DLC, and I just don't know if they'll get to that this time. I think it would make a great focal point, the Dwarven lands, for the next game after this, but that might be planning too far ahead, and maybe they want to tease people with some more. Fingers crossed. I love it when they do that, when they drop little hints throughout the games and you pick them up along the way. There's also the question, once again, of the gods and the return of the Evanurus. Does it happen? Do they all return? Will we see them all? Will we only see a couple? Will the others get away? Like, there's a lot that could happen there, but the bigger question for me is what this could mean for the Maker. Will we maybe finally get some kind of concrete answer on, does the Maker exist? I would like to see that sort of answered, partially because this will come up later on in a gameplay video, but part of me hopes that they add a fourth class. I wouldn't mind seeing that this particular game have more of a faith-based argument to it, because you got to remember, Solus in a lot of ways is a god. He's not a god, but to the people, the elvish people, he was Fen'Harel, the Dreadwolf. That was something of a god. And then you have the Evanurus, who are also gods. The Makers in there, the veils being torn down. This could really play into a faith-based sort of narrative, and I wouldn't mind if they spoke about that and maybe gave us some history on what that means, and finally some concrete answers, like the veil being torn down. Could that return holy magic to this universe? Could this be the end of the Dragon Age and the start of the next age? Which, who knows? Like, one of the things that I could be wrong at this point, but I'm fairly certain that if the veil comes down, magic gets buffed, I guess you could say. It's probably not really giving it the credit it deserves, but part of why the elves died is they relied so heavily on magic. When the veil got put up, it muted them. So that to me makes it sound like they were far stronger with the veil down. So would magic return in a big way? I would like to see that answered. One of the other things that I kind of hope gets brought up, but look, if you're dealing with soulless in any huge way, and once again, if the Evanurus come into it, I would like to see who the Forgotten are. So to sort of recap on that, there was mention of the Forgotten that soulless could walk between the Evanurus and the Forgotten at will, and he was the only one who could do it. He was accepted by both sides. I would like to see who they are. That's an interesting question to me that never truly got answered. We can make a lot of assumptions about who they are, and God knows I have, but I wouldn't mind seeing who they actually are, especially if they return as well, because if they are a power to be reckoned with, if it locked the Evanurus behind the veil, is it possible it locked the Forgotten as well, and all of a sudden they're not too happy with soulless either? That might be an interesting take on it. Now, in conclusion, what do I want out of this? Like, what's the one thing that I want more than anything out of Dragon Age 4? And it comes down to one word: tragedy. Dragon Age, for everything it tried to do in Inquisition, for putting the world on your shoulders, which it kind of did, it didn't have a lot of tragedy in my mind. I think back to that first trailer they released, where you see Varric standing over or kneeling over a corpse, looking devastated. This is very un-Varric. Like, he's usually laughing and happy, and here he is, serious, somber, upset, obviously in over his head as well. Like, he's a man who didn't want to be a hero, and now people are dying around him. So I want to see them play up with this sort of idea. This is the one thing where I feel Bioware is at their strongest, when they play with your emotions, when they play with tragedy, and when they play with death. They really have this ability to make you care for the people around you, to make you care for the environment, the world, and then make you risk it. Like, that's the big thing, is you've got it. Part of the gamble with, especially with Bioware game, not so with others, is that risk. If you make a decision, people could die. Now, we saw that heavily in the Mass Effect games, which I loved. Who doesn't remember Morden's death? Like, who doesn't remember the choice on Vermeer? Like, there are things that happen and people die. I can't tell you the amount of times I had to replay the end of Mass Effect 2 just to try and not have people die on the way there. It was terrifying, because you'd come to love them by the end. I want to see that same effort put into 4. If war is breaking out, I want to see us feeling it. I want to see people dying. I want to see us give choices where the answer to the question is bad and worse, but we're not quite sure which one is which, and then you have to live with the consequences. I think that could be a hell of a story, and for me, yes, I'm a Bioware fanboy, but if anyone could pull it off, it's Bioware. Thank you all for listening, and I hope to see you next time on the next video, where we will probably talk about gameplay choices. See you.